Katie Chats here at SMITHEE TV in downtown Toronto with actor CHRIS GIBBS. What was it like working with Samuel L. Jackson?
Right, so well, as I mentioned, I had the smallest role I've ever had, while technically still being a role. Because I'm used to being, guy number 5, one day I'll be guy number 1, or you're like your job description, security guard, and I was concierge, and then when I tried to find what I was going to do, I searched the script. Initially, obviously, I read the script eventually, and the word concierge does not appear in the script. So I was never completely sure. Now the trouble is, when you're the smallest role on the film, you're the worst person to mess things up. So Samuel L. Jackson was in the movie The Samaritan. He can come in and go, oh, I forgot my line. Everyone goes, oh, what a great big star he is. I'm so grateful he's doing our movie. I'm assuming is what they do. Whereas if I made anything similar to the same mistakes, it's like, well, let's get rid of him and get that, bucket to play his role. So it was very nerve-wracking. And then, so basically at one point there was a scene, and from my understanding, the scene was I was going to be sitting behind the desk while Samuel L. Jackson, who you cannot refer to as anything other than Samuel L. Jackson. No, I'm not saying he asks for that, but it always has felt wrong when I'm talking about it, because I didn't meet him.
You can't be like, yo, like Sam, sup?
Sam did this, or Jackson. No part of it feels right. Not even L, would be nice. And it's not that he seemed very, very nice, if quiet, and he's quite obviously the most intimidating star I've ever met. Not that I've met anybody else. But it was like, oh, Sam, he's the first person I've ever gone, I really wish I could get over the issue of getting an autograph, because my son, who's 5, I could go, this is Frozone, this is Nick Fury, this is all these people you've actually seen, and I met him. But anyway, so there was this scene where I thought I was just going to be sitting there, and then obviously the setup of the scene had changed, and you don't tell that to the least important person in the cast. So I'm sitting behind a desk expecting Samuel L. Jackson to walk past me, and he just comes up to the desk, and he's like, well, why can't he do this? And they're talking about me as if I'm not there, and I'm like, is there a scene? And I've completely messed up, and I'm supposed to have lines. Maybe I've got a whole. Maybe I'm supposed to hit him, and I should have, and I just kind of sit there, and they actually resolve this whole thing without me ever moving. And then when I get the moment, I go to the AD, and I'm like, can I just check the sides? And then I find out it was exactly what I had thought. It has changed. But up until that point, I was really quite sure I would never work again.
And were you happy with the outcome of the scene?
I've never actually seen it. It's one of that's the thing. It's I think it's out, I guess it's one of those things, I may have been invited to a screening, I'm not sure, but if I wasn't, I have no resentment at all. People saw it at TIFF, that was one thing I knew, and they knew me, but didn't know I was in this thing. And it was kind of nice in a way, because they were like, we kept expecting you to come back, because it's you. But it was just nice. I'm so glad I give the impression of being more successful than I am.
And you also have a one-man show that you're about to start touring. What is the inspiration behind that?
I've actually got several one-man shows. I've actually toured this before. What's about to happen, it's actually coming up in the end of 2013 season. The show is called Like Father, Like Son. Sorry. And it's funny because I think of it as, I wrote it about my son, but it's not. It's about me having a son. Because I can't write a show about him. He's got to do that. Which I'm sure he will. In 25 years' time, he'll write Like Father, Like Son, Sorry 2, Why My Dad Is So Bad at Things. Why I'm so glad I'm not like my son. So basically the inspiration, I became a dad 5 years ago. Coincidentally, the same time my son was born. And I always was really worried that it would be a terrible thing to do to a human being, is to be their dad. So the whole sort of, initially, I started doing the show when he was 2. So it was all about little odd things that kind of worried me before he was born. I remember, I get a lot of my inspiration for life from movies, and there's no movies where the dad is a comedian. I've never seen that. You don't go your dad, I once saw your dad entertain a group of 100 drunk people. Oh, if it hadn't been for him, they would have, I don't know, nobody ever does that.
Are you worried about being a good role model as a comedian?
Yeah, I'm not actually not worried about that. Most of the comedians I know are very clever, moral people. I suspect there's also a bunch of comedians who aren't. I just don't spend time with them. Not through any sheer, because I'm probably too boring for them. So right now it's this weird little thing where he he went to this new daycare person, and we said, oh, you're probably going to play out in that garden. We sort of looked at the house. And then when he first met her, she said, we're going to go play. And he said, what is this thing called playing? And he was, 4 at the time. And, it's just this knowledge that no one understands when I make jokes like that. No one is going to understand when you make jokes like that. And so, I'm expecting kind of calls from people. And it's a little bit scary thinking, like, if he's just like me, he's going to spend his whole life making terrible jokes that nobody understands, even our jokes.
What was her response to playing?
I think she's seen a lot of different behaviors, so she was okay with that. But it's more about sort of me when I see, like, okay, whoa, when I watch the other kids with him, and I'm like, uh-oh, you're doing that thing I do, which is why a lot of the other kids didn't play with me after a certain age. Just you're a little bit weird, when you're a little bit too thoughtful, sometimes you can be a bit lonely.
And is your father similar to you as well?
He's not anymore. And I never really knew him that much. He's dead, so sorry, that's why.
I'm sorry.
No, he died a long time ago, and it wasn't a big deal. I just laughed because I knew how awkward you would feel. So I was like, hey, how do I do that? He's just like me, except still and underground. So, sorry, it's unfair because it's not your dad, so you don't obviously feel the same comfort to laugh at. And it's not that I'm laughing at his death, I'm laughing at other people being embarrassed. I don't know, I'm the youngest of 7 children, so I never really got, I've always felt like I never really got the A game of parenting from my parents. They were like, nah, well, we did it for the others. In fact, my mother used to say that, I did it for the other 6. Even if she just said for the other 5, it wouldn't have felt so bad. For the other 6, I'm not going to do it for you. It was just like, oh, I'm special. And it's funny because my siblings all sort of say that I got the best deal, but it was like, it didn't sound like it to me. I never had any birthday parties. All kind of like mediocre. No, it's nothing.
You never had birthday parties?
And personally, well, no. And I never really wanted them, but then who knows?
And are you giving your son birthday parties?
We do little ones. That's the thing, is I don't want to mix with anyone, so I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to have birthday parties. I'll have to talk to people I don't know. Oh, I guess that will mess you up. I suppose we have to. Fortunately, my wife is there too, so she's socially able.
Great. And what are some of the highlights of your show? Are there any scenes in particular that you're very fond of?
It's funny, actually, because I'm fond of all of them, and I use some of them. Like, I recently did some showcases, so I did like one story from it, which is about when he was first born. In fact, I think I talked about it last time I was here, where he tried to breastfeed from me, which is like, wow, I didn't realize you could make bad decisions that early in life. So that's sort of one. But when I do the show, I'm kind of, I'm fond of all of them. Like, there's like when he starts talking and how that sort of changes. And the show actually was intended to be just sort of themed stand-up, and then there's a story that comes out. So when I'm doing it, when you have a show that you do over and over again, it's a bit like watching a favorite movie with someone who hasn't seen it before. So you're experiencing it again with them. So it's quite nice to be, like, there's a whole thing about lying to your children, which I learned at a certain point. In fact, I talked about working with Samuel L. Jackson in that scene.
They're all coming together.
Well, it's funny, because when I first started doing the show, it was just like, oh, I did this thing, and an acting coach said this. And then it was like, oh, no, I could change the story and put this real thing in it. I used to do a movie, it was Samuel L. Jackson. And then the audience is briefly impressed until they realize, no, wait, if there was anything impressive about what you just said, I would already have heard of you. So they kind of realize, yeah, automatically, that's not the case. I think more recently, like, some of my favorite stuff is what happens at the end, which is sort of what the show is about. Like, a lot of it's about just, things I didn't know about childbirth and things like that, like initially, and then he's born, and then there's things I didn't know about babies. And then, there's like the overall sort of worry of, like, you don't see, like, people don't take comedians' lives seriously. It's a weird thing. Like, and I'm not like a big Comedians are Saints or anything. But if there's a comedian on CSI and he's the victim, it's really funny. It's trivial. And for me, and I'm a comedian, so I'm like, why is that guy's death not that important to you? Like, why is that like, hey, let's lighten the mood? And when I think of that, and like my son going, like, and people going, what's your dad do? Oh, he's kind of a nobody. Like, people will laugh when he dies. So there's all sort of stories about that. It's funny. There's a story in this show where, and it's about a story that sort of didn't happen. I was on a small plane in New Zealand, and there was a bunch of it was actually, we were doing a street theatre festival, and they flew some performers, like 7 or 8 performers down to this other town just to do 1 day of shows, and then we were going to fly back to the festival. And it was very bumpy. It was a small plane, so it suddenly got really bumpy. And I remember looking around, and there was a juggler, like a magician, me, sort of an overweight acrobat, another acrobat. And I just had this horrible realization that if the plane did crash, we would be the funny item on the end of the news. And that was just like, you know, smiles were a little harder to come by today. A comedian, several magicians. So it's that realization. But anyway, yes, sorry, what I was saying. My favorite part now is talking about sort of worrying about spreading shyness, which I think is largely misunderstood by people. They think shyness is like Hugh Grant and kind of like, and very obvious. Whereas shyness actually isn't that, from my opinion, from my experience. Shyness is, you don't appear like, oh, I get exactly what he's doing. He's shy, he doesn't have confidence.
Do you think that a lot of comedians hide actual like shyness through like their comedy? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think yeah, I could go on and on, but and have and will. I think a lot of what I experience as shyness is actually you're wanting to do it well. What other people seem to have is this sort of, either they don't know how badly they're doing social interactions, or they are just automatically okay at sort of roughing it. Whereas from my experience and the kind of shy people that are like me, which always seems weird because I'm a performer, but it's like, it actually makes sense, is it's easier to go out and talk to a stage full of, like a theatre full of 200 people than it is to talk to one person sometimes, because there's rules. When you go out on stage and you're doing a one-man show, anything you do is part of that one-man show, whether people like it or not, but they will accept it. They'll go like, oh,
one of the things that I find really interesting and something I respect about comedians is the whole craft that goes into it when you perform and then you adjust your jokes and rewrite them. Can you speak a little bit to the process of recrafting your act?
That's a good question. I can only speak. What I sort of tend to do is you're trying to sort of put forward an idea. So whenever I'm sort of helping people, which occasionally people ask me for help, for me, comedy is about clarity and joy as the two things that largely go wrong. So first thing is to be clear with your joke. So often it's a good joke that you like doing, or that something about it you liked, and you just find it, oh, it wasn't clear that time. So you just find those, sometimes you'll say something and you don't even realize that it's this tiny little difference that has changed everything. So, I mean, it's in that way, there's like two aspects of it. There's what you do beforehand, which is you try and make it as clear as possible. Then you do it, you might try out jokes with people. It's kind of weird. Or you do it on stage and then you're like, okay, it made sense, but I didn't quite get this working in the right way. So then once you've got that right, I actually find, maybe I'm just lazy, but I tend to, like, if it doesn't work the first time, I don't worry about it, I don't bother. If there's a joke in it that I really like, I might sort of try and force it to work. Go, no, I just didn't do it quite right. But I've usually found that once you get the idea across, then it's as good as it's going to be. In a way, that particular joke is as good as it's going to be. You might add other things to it, but the essential kind of joke of it is not. Once you know people have understood it, there's nowhere else to go. Like, in my experience, and so you might sort of find. That said, you do sort of suddenly find, oh, I couldn't imagine that going better, and then you kind of do it by accident. My writing is a lot of accidents. I do stuff, it goes wrong, people laugh more, and I keep that and say, well, that's what I was intending to do.
And then what about the joy aspect as well?
That was kind of, because my background is sort of clowning. I was a street performer, and I worked with a guy who was trained with Philippe Gaulier, who's like a big, and I actually trained Philippe Gaulier myself. I liked him less than the person that I worked with. And it's all about enjoying yourself on stage. And like that works as an improviser, and with everything. If you like being on stage, people will like watching you. Now, it helps to have good things to say and good things to do, but there's a certain sort of that I think that a lot of that presence that people like, well, I really liked him, and then if you add on top of that jokes, that can really help. So there's sort of the joy comes across. Is like I remember when I was starting out doing stand-up, there were some quite rough clubs in London, and suddenly there is no joy, because a large part of it is the people in that club are going there to shout at you. Where, like, I've always worked better in the, strangely enough, when people are going to a club to enjoy themselves and have a laugh by listening to what I have to say, and maybe including themselves, but not just to be nasty to someone, which there are elements where there are certain clubs where that's like, you know, and you listen to audience members and, oh, I loved it, we made 2 people cry, and it was just like, it's not my cup of tea. But I played those clubs, and I have found that then what happens is you kind of step back, and you just become like the what do you call it, like you're just like a person regurgitating your writing. You're not a person enjoying being on stage, so that you can really see the difference. So in many ways, like, the jokes sort of channel that enjoyment. If you like being on stage and you're doing stuff you like and you're sort of telling jokes, the jokes actually don't even have to be that funny if you're enjoying themselves. That's a terrible thing to say, and it's not true. Okay. Sorry.
So when exactly can we expect to see your show up and running again?
The next one is actually in March. I'm going to Saskatoon in March, just for one day, I think, possibly a couple. And then I'll be in, like, Alberta, Saskatoon in October, November, and then back here the following March. But I'm probably going to do it somewhere in Toronto before then, just to sort of, because I'm sort of doing an expanded version. All of the individual bits I've done before, but I would like to actually do them all in one go without having someone shout at me for going too long.
Okay. And where is the best place to find out more information on you and on your work online?
CHRISGibbs.ca, my proud Canadian website.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was so nice to see you again, and best of luck with all of your upcoming work.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and the same to you.
Thank you. I'm Katie Uhlmann reporting for Katie Chats here at Smithy TV in downtown Toronto.